Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, we here at In the Seats believe that it's an important thing to let a little bit of absurdity into your life, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more, and probably are letting a little bit of absurdity into your life. But as always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can find us over at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and give us that old 5-star like and subscribe, basically anywhere you get your podcasts. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd really appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram, either at In the Seats. Well, I don't know. It's at In the Seats. For all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large, because if we like to write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. Well, you know, we got a good one on this episode opening tomorrow over in select theaters, but at our friends at the Revue Cinema, where we'll be hosting a Q&A with a few special guests. It's called Stanleyville, and it's a fun ride. It's the story of a dissatisfied woman who decides one day to just abandon her career and her family when she gets a chance to compete in a bizarre but dangerously flawed contest, with the prize being a brand new habanero-orange compact SUV. This is a delightfully absurd, crazy, fun ride. I mean, with the tagline, "Discover the true you that comes from inside the UU," this is a lot of fun, and it comes from the mind of co-writer and director Maxwell McCabe-Lokos, who we had the unique pleasure of sitting down and talking with about his inspirations for the movie, getting it made, and the question that is on all of our minds: why was it a brand new habanero-orange compact SUV? But this is an incredibly fun movie, and I hope you guys, if it sounds interesting to you, do check it out at the Revue Cinema. I know they're going to have a couple of select screenings as well on top of tomorrow night's screening and Q&A, but come out, say hello, and enjoy yourself some Stanleyville. But first, enjoy our talk with Maxwell McCabe-Lokos, because between you and me, it's a good one.
All right, well, first off, man, thank you so much for the time today. I appreciate this.
Oh, thank you.
Now, I mean, obviously, man, congratulations on the movie. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I guess my first question is just walk me through the origin of the story on your end.
The origin of the story. I mean, the story doesn't really have like an origin story. It's kind of, I hate to disappoint, but it's just fiction. You know, it was hey, let's write it.
No, yeah, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, even the fiction part is kind of like, well, it's like me and Rob were like, we'd written a few movies together. Rob Benvey, my co-writer, and they were little, like, kind of ambitious, budgetarily speaking, and so we sort of tasked ourselves with just writing something that was a little bit more attainable, given like what I thought I could get for a budget. So, I mean, and then I guess, there's influences. Like, I think at the time I was watching a lot of Adam Curtis documentaries. I don't know how they're in there, but that might explain the sort of like shoehorning a lot of little references in it. I don't know if have you ever seen an Adam Curtis documentary?
I believe I have, yeah.
They're really, it's like B-roll footage from the BBC, and then it's a kind of essay, like he
yes, yeah,
on top of it, and they're very full of information, and they're very like it's like an encyclopedic sort of amount of knowledge that just goes off, and like the subject of one might be like Soviet, well, it's called hypernormalization is one of them, so it's kind of like post modern Soviet perspective on society, or what the Soviet society, sort of how they view things after living in a very manipulated and society. And so it's kind of spastic and full of ideas and references. And so I think now, thinking back at it, like Stanleyville is kind of chock full of like useless information. So I think it was the kind of aesthetically the Adam Curtis. And then I think I remember I was watching, I was like watching One Room movies and We Close movies, that no exit stuff. And I really liked that. There's a Bunuel one called Exterminating Angel. Is that the Bunuel one? I think so.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
That was the one I was like, oh, this is really kind of good, because they can't leave a room, but they can. Like there's no physical obstacle blocking them from leaving the room. They've just like psychologically are unable to leave this room. A group of people are having a dinner party and they're just unable to leave them. But yeah, so it was just kind of like, well, let's do something like that, and then we just made shit up.
Well, I mean, that leads me to my next question. I mean, did you find the room? Did you design the room? Because I mean, I think for me, I love the little touches, just with the little fixtures and just the use of color. Like, was that something you found just sort of in location scouting, or is it something you guys specifically designed?
Well, it was in the script. It's described exactly like that. And when we were location scouting, we found an old warehouse in Hamilton with no electricity and it was just like a shell. It looked like fucking Chernobyl or something. And it worked. The layout basically worked. There was the main room, and there was a couple other rooms that we turned into bedrooms, like that room where Andrew Frisbee's room with the pedestal bed. It's not a pedestal bed. What are they called? Canopy bed.
Yeah.
Like that was a bathroom. Like we changed everything. Me, like my brother Elliot, and he was a production designer, and me and Haley, the producer, and everybody. Like my mom came and helped paint, and I mean, there's a lot of paint, but it required 7 weeks of being there or 6 weeks of being there every day. Every day, it went from being something that was just like a bombed out shell to something that has electricity and a kitchenette and windows, and it was a lot of work, but luckily the basic layout of the room worked for the story.
That's perfect.
Yeah, we were lucky.
Now, I mean, obviously in a film like this, the sort of the locked in the room kind of concept, you got to have the right actors. And I mean, I think you definitely have those here. And I mean, I love Suzanne in this. Like, can you talk to me a little bit just about sort of getting Suzanne to come over and do this film? Because I mean, I think she's absolutely fantastic in it.
Yeah, I mean, I read at some iteration of this movie, I wanted to shoot it in Germany. It wasn't really feasible, but Haley, the producer, and me went to it's called EFM, European Film Market, and it's like the market that happens simultaneously with or alongside the Berlin Film Festival. So we went down there to try and like raise some money, and I was still at that time thinking, oh, we're going to shoot it here, and so we had a casting director in Germany who I had given her a list of actresses that I thought would be really cool, and Suzanne Wust was on that list. And then so she was just cool, and we met with her, had dinner, and then hung out a couple times and just talked. And then she was just like, yeah, I'll do it. And then she kept her word.
In this business, that's a beautiful thing, man. Seriously.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, God bless her for keeping her word. I don't think she knew how fucking scrappy it was going to be when she agreed to it.
No, but you know what? I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, obviously it's, Canadian filmmaking is independent filmmaking, but when I see Julian show up on set, it immediately gives everything a sense of gravitas. I mean, can you talk a little bit just about getting Julian to do this and sort of being in this part? Because he's so perfect for parts like this. I mean, it almost feels like you wrote it for him.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if I did now that you mention it. I think originally it was written for, this is funny. The guy that I had in mind was, or at least like not to necessarily play the part, but they're in the movie, there's a part when a delivery guy knocks at the door and brings this like protein powder to, and he also delivers lunch. Like he has these two sort of small parts. He's a Hungarian guy that I know in Toronto. His name is Mishi Mihaly. And he was who I had in mind. I was thinking that it would be him, but he, for whatever, like I needed somebody that could actually sort of act. You know what I mean? I mean, that sounds harsh, but I needed somebody that could do a lot of dialogue in a and perform in a way that was efficient. And she didn't really have the experience, I'll put it that way. But Julian Richings, the guy who plays Homunculus, was always like in the back of my head, because I know Julian because I act as well and stuff, and we've done a lot of things together. Like we did a movie in Quebec a few years ago where in the end of the movie, like we're not even in it. It was this like huge Doug Liman thing with like Spider-Man and some girl from fucking Star Wars. It was like a giant $150 million budget movie. We'll get like, character role. He obviously works a lot more than I do, but I know him from acting, and because we're neighbors and we're friends, and so I just asked him if he would want to do, if he would consider doing it, and he was into it. I mean, that guy's he's a very generous man. I mean, he doesn't need to do like super low budget movies like this. It's not gonna pay his mortgage to make whatever reduced scale we've negotiated with the union on something this modest, but he likes stuff. Like he likes indie stuff, and he cares about doing, sort of helping out interesting filmmakers. And I think he likes, I mean, he's a good actor. I mean, like he gets into the part, he did a good job. It worked out very, very, the casting was pretty relatively easy, I would say. Like when people say yes and you don't have to get a million no's, and then you end up with like whoever you start off with like Tom Cruise, and you end up with, I don't know, fucking who's go down the list. Me.
I mean, that begs a nice question. Are you the actor who's always wanted to direct, or was this just an opportunity that sort of came along and you said, fuck it, let's do it?
No, I kind of have, I made a few shorts, and I've written some stuff. I wrote a movie that I wrote myself a part in. I think acting is kind of like, it's kind of, in a way, it's all the same. It's all showbiz. It's like, it's not, I chose, maybe mistakenly, however many 20 years ago, to be in film, like to be like somebody that works in film and TV. And it's, if I could only act in it, then I would have less work. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's sort of like, well, if I'm going to work in this industry, I have to figure out other ways to work in this industry. And so, and luckily the industry is kind of like forgiving enough in some ways that you can fumble your way into things, which I fumbled my way into acting, and I sort of fumbled my way into directing, and I'm still fumbling my way into directing. So it's not, it was sort of like a survival tactic to get into directing. But I also think I'm like a bossy guy who has ideas he thinks are really clever. So, that's a director.
Well, and fumbling your way into something is not necessarily a bad thing either. You know what I mean? It takes the pressure off too.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, you have to put it in perspective once you make a movie, that maybe all of your criticisms before you made a movie don't feel so warranted. But Yeah, I mean, I'm not so green that I haven't, like, I've been spending 20 years on film sets, and
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, there's some fumbling there for sure.
Now I gotta ask, who belongs to the orange SUV, or was it always an orange SUV in the script? Like, why the orange SUV? I guess is the next question.
Why the orange SUV? Because I don't know. I mean, like, cars are kind of. I mean, I have a car. I'm not against cars. I have a 2009 Nissan Versa. It's got a manual windows and standard transmission. But I like my car. I'm not against vehicles, but they're such a perfect. It's just like the example of a commodity. Like it doesn't. It's a valuable commodity, I guess, but it's just a commodity, and it's kind of goes. It's also just like the standard prize in contests. But orange, but it actually in the original or an earlier draft of the script, it was purple. It was like a aubergine purple compact SUV, but then we couldn't find a purple. We couldn't find a purple one. Poor Haley was like calling every rental company in the city and the province trying to find a purple. And then I was just like, it has to be like a heinously ugly color. There was like semen white colored Cadillac Escalade, or but orange definitely is like, I mean, I think it's an ugly color. So then I was like, Rob, okay, give me an adjective. He's like, half an hour later, he's like, habanero-orange. And so that's what it is.
Now, I mean, something about your film that I really enjoyed, and I mean, this is true to sort of the style of the film, is that it really lets the actors time to sort of work in the space and really sort of play with the ideas that are going back and forth. Like, for you wanting to make a feature, how important was it for you to sort of create a space where you had actors who could really sort of tear into the material, which I think everyone here did?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of there was it was important. Well, okay, first of all, the aesthetic, or maybe not the aesthetic, but like the sensibility of the movie is most of the time, I would say, it's pretty kind of clowny and silly. Like, and I didn't want it to ever. There's some things that can be interpreted as sort of esoteric ideas, or as sort of like esoteric, but like contemplative or something in there, like pseudo philosophical ideas. But it was never meant to be taken. I didn't want to make a movie that took itself too seriously. I didn't want to come across as taking the subject matter too seriously. I didn't want to come across as taking myself too seriously. So I really wanted it to be kind of like Looney Tunes clowniness. And I think also because I like doing that kind of stuff. When I act, if I get a job acting, I do what the job requires, and it's generally, kind of some mix between some simulacrum of naturalism. It's not, but to be big and clowny is fun. It's fun to do, and I think a lot of actors they like doing that. Actors are like performers. Like, being big and stuff is a fun thing to do. So I wanted it to be clear that this was going to be like a broad sort of stage show, and the actors that were cast, they knew that, and I think they liked it. I mean, I think it's kind of, it takes a minute to get into that sort of mode because it's not so common now. I mean, I guess it is. I guess sitcoms are that way. I don't know. I think it was important that it had a kind of broad sensibility to it, and that the actors were okay with being goofy.
Well, I mean, I love that you brought up Bunuel too, because I mean, there is this obvious absurdist quality to the material, but you're still invested in it at the same time, which I think for me is really what makes it interesting. And I mean, I'm kind of curious on your end, like what are the films and what are the movies actually made you want to get into this business in the first place, or fumble in, as it were, like we said before?
Yeah. I mean, I guess for kind of, like I felt sort of maybe more inspired to do absurdist, or like, to my own kind of version of absurdist or surrealist stuff. Or maybe I felt more emboldened to do it after the, that like Lanthimos stuff that came out that was really refreshing, and it seemed to inspire like that. Who's that other woman? Athena something, like Chevalier, and like that. There's some Greek movie that when those movies became kind of, mainstream, I guess, or accepted by the mainstream, it made me think like, okay, well, like, I guess maybe I could cobble together $200,000 or something like that. I mean, it didn't seem like my short films were kind of like that, already, but it was like, well, you don't really have anybody to answer to when you make a short film. So it was kind of, but that stuff I think there is like a refreshingly popular, acceptance of it's not so much that I love surrealism or absurdism, but I'm more like an absurd view on an absurd situation. Like, I guess as people look around and see fucking Donald Trump is in the White House. I mean, not anymore, he's not, but when that happened, it was kind of like a world change. Like, oh, well,
yeah,
everything is fucking weird. Like, why? And then it started to make things feel sort of pretentious that weren't. Like, I don't want to only make goofy movies, but like everything that took itself so seriously and everything that was just like a straight ahead story about, like, I don't know, some fucking teenagers in a small town and they want to like break out and move to New York or whatever. Like, it just felt like, what's the point? Like, why am I watching this shit? Like, it's so boring. It's so much less interesting than just looking out at what's going on in the world right now. So you're in a competition, an absurdism competition with fucking QAnon or with like, whatever, like the entire Amazon rainforest being like raised for decks in Toronto.
Yeah. And plus you've been on $100 million movie sets, which I'm sure is an absurd adventure in and of itself.
I love that absurdity, because you just show up and like try and keep your head down, and then maybe they'll forget you're there, but you're making really good money. But yeah, I mean, it's the scale of absurdity. It's definitely hard to compete with right now. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, Max, man, just thanks for the work and thanks for bringing sort of your take on this, because I mean, I absolutely loved it, man. It's
thank you.
It's a compelling thing to watch, and I mean, I remember seeing it back in Fantasia, and I was like, damn, this is really good. I can't wait for the world to see this, and now the world is. But you know what, Max, thanks again for the time today, and congratulations again on the film.
Thank you very much.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.